Sad billionaire alone on Christmas. Until a single dad and daughter change everything, the security guard didn't lower his voice. "Sir, you can't be here." People around them froze. Conversations died. Forks paused. Glasses stopped moving. Laughter fell silent. Calderon felt every eye on him as he stood there, coat damp from melting snow, hand locked with his daughter Eunice's. He tried to explain calmly. He'd paid for parking. He'd been told the restaurant upstairs stayed open for emergencies. They only needed warmth. Just a few minutes. The guard didn't care. "Hi, welcome to Pop Stories channel. Thanks for watching. Kindly tell me what country you're watching from." Behind the glass wall, a man sat alone. Crystal chandeliers hung above him. A table set for many people, but only one person sitting there. His eyes were sharp, calm, and watching the Eunice's grip tightened on Calder's hand. The money in his pocket was for survival, not luxury. A motel room. Heat for the night. Keeping Eunice out of the cold. That's all he had. The guard reached for Calder's sleeve. Then the billionaire lifted his head and watched. Too closely. The girl's eyes locked with the man's. Something felt wrong. Calder felt it immediately. This wasn't random. This was planned. "Sit," the man said quietly. Eunice obeyed before Calder could stop her. She walked straight to the table and sat down. Calder froze. His heart hammered in his chest. The guard stepped back, confused. The other diners whispered. But the billionaire just watched. Calder realized what was happening. This wasn't kindness. This wasn't charity. This was a test. The room was a stage. The guard was the audience. And the billionaire was the director. Watching everything unfold, Calder's hands started shaking. Every instinct told him something was about to happen. Something that would change everything. The man gestured toward another chair. "You too," he said. Calder hesitated. He looked at Eunice sitting there, small and calm, like she belonged. Then he looked at the billionaire's face, cold, calculating, waiting. Calder walked forward slowly and sat down across from the man. The door closed behind them with a soft click. No one spoke. The test had begun. And Calder had no idea what the rules were. Calder hated Christmas, not because of cheer or food or family. He hated how it exposed absence. Every streetlight showed what he couldn't give Eunice. Every decorated window was a mirror of his failure. The car's heating had died hours ago. Eunice slept against the glass, her breath fogging it softly. He tried shelters. None had space. Every warm place closed their doors because of holiday capacity. The restaurant wasn't a choice. It was desperation. They arrived with wet coats and frayed gloves. The invisible label of outsiders hung over them like a sign. Inside, everything gleamed. Plates like art. Waiters in perfect uniforms. People who could never imagine living like this. Calder felt every inch of difference pressing into him. Eunice woke up and looked around. Her eyes went wide at the lights, the decorations, the warmth. "Daddy, why do you look nervous?" she asked. "It's nothing," he said. But it was everything. The humiliation of being powerless in a city that moved too fast. Of being seen and ignored at the same time. It clung to him like frost he couldn't shake off. And above it all, through the glass, the man in the private dining room watched. Not mean, not cruel, just observing, waiting. Calder's mind raced. Why me? Why us? But he stayed silent. He didn't know it yet, but that silence would save him. The guard had approached them at the worst moment. Right when other people could see. Right when Calder felt the most exposed. He could have yelled. Could have fought back. Could have made a scene. But he didn't. He kept calm. Kept his daughter close. Kept his dignity even when everyone was watching him fall apart. And the billionaire noticed. That's what people don't understand about power. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it watches from behind glass walls, testing you without saying a word. Calder didn't pass the test, because he was smart or strong. He passed because he stayed calm when the world wanted him to break, because he put Unia first, because he swallowed his pride and focused on what mattered. The billionaire saw all of it, and now, sitting across from this man in the private room, Calder finally understood. This wasn't about money. This was about character. And the real test was just beginning. Unia tugged free from Calder's hand. Her small boots padded softly toward the private dining room. The security guard's hand froze in midair, confused. Calder lunged forward, panic shooting through him. But Unia was already at the table. The billionaire didn't flinch. He just studied her. The calm of someone used to control radiated from him. But he didn't threaten. He didn't speak. He just waited. Then Unia asked the question that changed everything. Did you lose someone too? Calder's heart skipped a beat. The question was simple, direct. But it cut deeper than any guard's authority ever could. It was precise, uncanny, and it exposed something the billionaire had been hiding. The man's face didn't change, but his eyes did. For just a second, the mask slipped and Unia's eyes were clear. No judgment, no fear, just honesty. Calder realized in that moment everything had shifted. They weren't powerless outsiders anymore. They were participants in a test they didn't understand yet. The billionaire gestured to the empty chair beside him. Unia sat down without hesitation. Her legs swung beneath the table, too short to reach the floor. Calder stood frozen at the door. Close it, the billionaire said quietly. Calder obeyed. The door clicked shut behind him. The noise from the restaurant disappeared. Now it was just the three of them in silence. The billionaire leaned back in his chair, eyes still on Unia. What's your name? He asked. Unia. How old are you? 7. And you're not scared of me? Unia tilted her head, thinking. Should I be? The billionaire almost smiled. Almost. Most people are, he said. That's because they want something from you. Unia said simply. We don't want anything. We just wanted to get warm. Calder's throat tightened. She was too honest, too open. In a world like this, that kind of honesty could get you hurt. But the billionaire didn't hurt her. He respected her. Your father, the billionaire said, finally looking at Calder. He didn't argue with the guard. Didn't make a scene. Why? Calder swallowed. Because making a scene wouldn't have helped. Most men would have fought back. Pride. Ego. Pride doesn't keep my daughter warm, Calder said flatly. The billionaire nodded slowly, like Calder had just passed another invisible test. Sit, he said again. Calder walked to the table and sat across from the man. His hands were shaking, but he kept them under the table where Unia couldn't see. The billionaire poured water into 3 glasses. He slid one to Unia, one to Calder. My name is Everett Hale, he said. And you just walked into something most people spend their whole lives trying to get into. Calder didn't understand. A test, Hale continued. One I've been running for years. And you both just passed the first round. Unia looked at Calder, confused. Calder looked at Hale, heart pounding. What kind of test? Calder asked carefully that Hale's smile was cold, calculating. The kind that changes your life, he said. If you survive it. The billionaire leaned forward. You were just publicly removed from my building, Everett Hale said to Calder. Calder bristled. We were leaving. Hale's smile was faint, unreadable. That wasn't the test. Calder's jaw tightened. What? Most people fail immediately, Hale said. They argue. They shout. They make it about themselves. You didn't. You kept calm. You prioritized your daughter over your pride. Calder said nothing. Hale tapped the table once. You have exactly 3 minutes to explain why you're here. Don't waste them. Calder's mind raced. 3 minutes. That's all he had to convince this man he wasn't just another desperate person looking for a handout. He spoke clearly, factually. No emotion. No drama. The car's heat died this afternoon. I tried 3 shelters. All full because of Christmas. I have money for a motel room, but nothing opens until morning. We just needed to warm up for an hour. That's it. Hale listened without interrupting. Calder continued. I wasn't trying to eat here. Wasn't trying to stay. Just warmth. For her, did he gesture to Unia, who sat quietly, watching both men like she was watching a movie. Hale nodded slowly. Good. You didn't beg. You didn't exaggerate. You stated facts and moved on. Calder didn't know if that was praise or another test. Most people in your position would have cried, Hale said. Would have made it emotional. Would have tried to manipulate sympathy. I don't need sympathy, Calder said flatly. I need a warm place for my daughter to sleep. To Hale's smile widened slightly. You pass, Calder blinked. Pass what? The test, Hale said. I've been running variations of it for 5 years. I hire people who don't know they're being hired. I watch how they react under pressure, how they prioritize, how they think. Calder's stomach dropped. You stage this. Not all of it, Hale admitted. But enough. The guard was real. Your desperation was real. But I was watching. Testing. Calder felt anger rising. You humiliated us for a job interview. I humiliated you to see if you'd break, Hale corrected. You didn't. Unia looked up at her dad. Are you mad, Daddy? Calder forced himself to breathe. To think. Hale wasn't apologizing. He wasn't backing down. He was offering something. And Calder needed to decide if he could swallow his pride long enough to take it. What happens now? Calder asked quietly. Hale pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. You start tomorrow. Logistics. Crisis analysis. Temporary contract. Prove yourself, and it becomes permanent. Calder stared at the card. His hand shook as he picked it up. Why me? He asked. Hale stood up, adjusting his suit. Because you didn't beg. You didn't cry. You didn't make excuses. You focused on solving the problem, not drowning in it. That he looked at Unia. And because your daughter asked me if I lost someone too. She saw something no one else has seen in years. That he walked toward the door, then paused. Most people are tested by failure, Hale said. You were tested by humiliation. And you passed. The door opened. Calder sat there, card in hand, heart pounding, that he realized something terrifying, that he hadn't been judged by wealth, or manners, or status, that he'd been judged by restraint, intelligence, focus. And somehow, against all odds, he had passed the BY morning. Calder was working in Hale's company, temporary, low-ranking, but real. The office was on the 42nd floor. Glass walls, marble floors, everything sleek and cold and intimidating. His job was logistics, crisis analysis, mapping inefficiencies in supply chains and operations. That IT sounded simple. It wasn't. The people around him moved fast, talked fast, thought fast. They wore expensive suits and carried themselves like they owned the world. Calder wore the same coat he'd worn in the restaurant, the same worn boots, the same exhaustion in his eyes. Every interaction exposed him as an outsider. You're the guy from Christmas, right? Someone asked in the break room. The tone wasn't kind. It was curious. Like studying an animal in a zoo. Calder nodded. That's me. Hale's charity case, another voice muttered. Calder ignored it. He didn't have the energy to fight. He just needed to survive. But then something changed. Real problems started landing on his desk. Shipping delays. Budget overruns. Operational bottlenecks that no one could solve. Calder stared at the data. And he saw patterns the elite had missed. He wrote up his analysis. Sent it to his supervisor. Expected nothing. 2 hours later. Hale called him into his office. You found the Indianapolis routing error, Hale said, not looking up from his computer. Calder nodded. It was costing you 3 days per shipment. 3 days we've been losing for 8 months, Hale said. And you found it in 4 hours. Calder didn't know what to say. Hale finally looked at him. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone grateful. Someone trying to please me. You're just solving problems. That's the job, Calder said simply. Hale smiled. Keep doing that. Over the next 2 weeks, Calder kept finding things. Small inefficiencies. Hidden costs. Problems people had stopped looking for because they assumed everything was fine. Respect came slowly. Quietly, colleagues stopped whispering. Started asking questions. Started listening when he spoke. Each small win built something in Calder he thought he'd lost, confidence. But every mistake still felt like a test. Every error still felt like it could end everything. Hale never yelled. Never punished. He just watched. Observed. Corrected. Each mistake became a lesson, not a judgment. Calder adapted till he learned the language of this world. The unspoken rules. The way power moved through hallways and emails and closed-door meetings. Unia came to the office, sometimes after school. She'd sit in the corner of the break room, doing homework, absorbing everything. She watched how people talked. How they moved. How they treated her father. Hale noticed her 2.1 afternoon. He walked past and stopped. Looked down at her notebook. What are you working on? He asked. Math. Unia said, do you like it? She shrugged. It's okay. I like puzzles better. Did Hale's eyes sharpened. What kind of puzzles? The kind where you have to figure out what's missing. Hale glanced at Calder across the room. Then back at Unia. You're a lot like your father, he said quietly. Unia smiled. Thank you. Hale didn't smile back. But something shifted in his expression. Something calculating. Calder saw it from across the room. Saw the way Hale studied his daughter like she was part of another test. And in that moment, Calder realized the truth. The test wasn't over. It had just evolved. And now it wasn't just him being tested. It was both of them. Success drew attention, not the positive kind. Her name was Celine Voss. She appeared 3 weeks after Calder started. Quiet. Sharp. Always near Hale. Always watching that N01 introduced her. She just existed, like she'd always been there. Calder noticed her during meetings. She sat in the back, never speaking, but her eyes tracked everything. Every word, every gesture, every person. Then things started changing. Meetings Calder used to attend, he stopped getting invitations. Data he needed for reports, suddenly delayed or incomplete. Projects he was working on, reassigned without explanation. That IT was subtle. So subtle that if Calder mentioned it, he'd sound paranoid. But he wasn't paranoid, he was being sabotaged. Calder's mind raced constantly now. Every email felt like a trap. Every conversation felt coded. Every smile from a colleague felt fake. That he started cataloging everything. Who spoke to whom? Who avoided him? Who asked questions that felt too specific? Anxiety coiled in his chest like steel wire pulled too tight. He couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat properly. Couldn't stop his brain from running through scenarios, patterns, possibilities. Unia noticed point one night. She found him pacing the tiny apartment they'd moved into. Back and forth. Back and forth. Daddy, why do they stare at you? She asked quietly. Calder froze. Forced himself to smile. It's nothing, sweetheart. It doesn't look like nothing. He knelt down to her level. Some people don't like it when new people do well. It makes them nervous. Are you scared? He wanted to say no. Wanted to protect her from the truth. But Unia had always seen through lies that a little, he admitted. But I'm handling it. She hugged him. Small arms around his neck. You're the smartest person I know. They should be scared of you. Calder's throat tightened. He held her close. But inside he knew the truth. The power balance had shifted. He had access now. Had proven himself. Had earned a place. But trust? That was tenuous. Fragile. And someone was working very hard to break it. The next day, Calder walked into Hale's office for a routine check-in. Celine was already there. She stood by the window, arms crossed, watching him enter with cold calculation. Hale gestured to a chair. Sit. Calder Saturday. Celine has raised some concerns, Hale said carefully. Calder's stomach dropped. What concerns? Celine's voice was smooth, professional. Inconsistencies in your reports. Small things. Dates that don't match. Numbers that seem adjusted. Calder's heart pounded. That's not true. I'm not accusing you, Celine said with a thin smile. I'm just noting discrepancies. Hale looked at Calder. Explain. Calder's mind worked fast. He pulled up his phone, found the original files, showed timestamps and version histories. These are the files I submitted. No changes. No adjustments. If there are discrepancies, someone altered them after I sent them. Celine's smile didn't waver. Or you're covering your tracks. Calder looked at Hale. You know my work. You've seen my results. Why would I sabotage myself? Hale said nothing for a long moment. Then, I'll review the files personally. Celine's smile tightened just slightly. Of course. Calder left the office, hands shaking. He'd won this round. Barely. But he knew the truth now. Celine wasn't just watching him. She was actively trying to destroy him. And the real game had just begun. The evidence appeared overnight. Calder arrived at work to find security waiting at his desk. Mr. Hale wants to see you. Now, his stomach dropped. He knew, before he even walked into the office. This was it. Hale sat behind his desk, face unreadable. Celine stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching. That on the desk was a printed audit report. Pages and pages of financial data. Sit, Hale said quietly. Calder Saturday. Hale slid the report across the desk. Explain this. Calder scanned the pages. His name. His employee ID. Transactions he'd never made. Funds transferred to accounts he'd never seen. $50,000. Missing. All traced back to him. This isn't real, Calder said, voice shaking. I didn't do this. The audit says otherwise, Celine said smoothly. Every transaction is logged. Every signature verified. Then someone forged them, Calder said desperately. I've never touched company funds. I don't even have access to. You were granted temporary financial access 3 weeks ago, Celine interrupted. For the logistics project. Calder's mind raced. That was true. He'd needed budget approval access for vendor contracts, but he'd never used it for personal transfers. Check the IP addresses, Calder said. Check the login times. I can prove I wasn't. We did, Hale said. His voice was cold now, distant. The logs show your credentials, your access times, your approvals. Calder felt the room spinning. Someone stole my login. This is a setup. That's what they all say, Celine said quietly. Hale leaned back in his chair. I expected more from you. Those words hit harder than anything else. I didn't do this, Calder repeated. His voice cracked. You know me. You've seen my work. Why would I? Money, Hale said simply. Desperation. Opportunity. No, Calder whispered. But Hale had already made his decision. Your access is revoked. You're suspended pending investigation. Security will escort you out. Calder stood up, legs shaking. Please. Just give me time to prove. You had time, Hale said. You wasted it. Celine opened the door. 2 security guards stood waiting. Calder looked around the office, at the people he'd worked with, the colleagues who'd started respecting him. They all looked away. Then no one spoke. No one defended him. The betrayal was surgical, precise, absolute. His desk was cleared in minutes. His ID deactivated. His name already being whispered through the office. Did you hear? Calder Rowan. Stealing from a company. I knew something was off about him. Hale gave him a chance, and he blew it. The whispers followed him all the way to the elevator. Public humiliation. Office gossip. Pointed glances. Every small victory he'd earned was reversed in minutes. By the time he reached the lobby, he was nobody again. Unia was waiting on the bench near the door, backpack on her lap. She looked up when she saw him. saw his face, knew immediately. Daddy, he knelt down and pulled her close. Held her tight. Too tight. We're just changing plans, he whispered into her hair. It's okay. We're okay. But his voice shook. Outside, the city felt colder, harsher. The streets that had felt full of possibility 2 months ago now felt like a trap closing around him. Unia held his hand as they walked. Are we going back to the car? She asked quietly. Calder swallowed hard. For now, she didn't cry. She never did. But she squeezed his hand tighter. And Calder realized the worst part wasn't losing the J. OB.IT was knowing Unia had watched him rise. And now she was watching him fall. The car engine hummed softly in the darkness. Calder drove through empty streets at 2 in the morning. Unia slept in the back seat, wrapped in their only blanket. That he couldn't sleep. His mind wouldn't stop. He drove. And replayed everything. Every meeting. Every conversation. Every small detail he'd missed. Celine appeared 3 weeks after he started. Not before. After he'd proven himself. Why then? He remembered the first project she questioned. A vendor contract. Small discrepancy in the dates. That he'd fixed it immediately. Moved on. But she'd noted it. Cataloged it. Then came the second incident. Missing data in a report. Calder had resubmitted. No big deal. But again, she'd documented it. Building case. Slowly. Methodically. Calder's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He thought about Hale's face in that first meeting. In the restaurant. Most people fail immediately. You didn't argue, didn't shout, and later in the office. I expected more. The same tone. The same coldness. Like he was disappointed. But not surprised. Calder's mind clicked into place. What if the betrayal wasn't just Celine acting alone? What if Hale knew? No. More than that. What if Hale planned it? Calder pulled the car over, heart racing. He remembered something Hale had said during their first real conversation. I hire people who don't know they're being hired. I watch how they react under pressure. Under pressure. The humiliation in the restaurant was pressure. But so was this. Calder's breathing slowed. His mind sharpened. Hale hadn't just tested him once. He was testing him again. The falsified audit. The missing funds. The public humiliation. It was all designed to strip him down. To see what he was made of when everything was taken away. To test resilience. Intelligence. Patience. But why? Calder thought about the way Hale had looked at Unia. The way he'd studied her like a puzzle. You're a lot like your father. And the way Hale had watched Calder adapt to the office. Learn the rules. Find the patterns that he wasn't just hiring an employee, that he was training someone for something bigger. Calder sat in the silence, letting the pieces fall into place. The betrayal was too perfect. Too clean. Celine appeared at exactly the right moment. The evidence was too convenient, and Hale's disappointment felt rehearsed, like he was playing a role, testing to see if Calder would break, would rage, would give up. Most people would, but Calder wasn't most people. That he'd survived worse than this. He'd lived in his car with his daughter, working 2 jobs, keeping her safe when the world tried to break him. This was just another storm, and storms pass. Calder pulled out his phone, opened his old work files, started looking at the patterns again. Not the falsified evidence. The real patterns. Celine's schedule. Her meeting times. The projects she touched. The people she talked to. Everything left a trail. Everything left clues. If this was a test, there had to be a way to pass it. And Calder was going to find it. He glanced back at Unia sleeping peacefully. She believed in him. Even when no one else did. He couldn't let her down. Not now. Not ever. The city lights glowed in the distance. Cold. Unforgiving. But Calder felt something shift inside him. Not defeat. Determination. The stakes were higher now. He knew that. But he also knew something else. He'd been tested before and survived. And he'd survived this too. No matter what it took. Calder spent the next 3 days mapping everything. Not on paper. In his mind, he sat in coffee shops with free Wi-Fi, Unia doing homework beside him, while he rebuilt the entire corporate landscape from memory, every department, every manager, every alliance. He noted who reported to whom, who had lunch together, who avoided each other in meetings, weaknesses in the structure, gaps in authority, places where information could slip through or be manipulated. Celine had power, but it wasn't absolute. She operated through influence, not direct control. That meant she had weak points too. Calder started teaching Unia without her realizing it. When we go places, I want you to watch people, he told her. See who talks to who smiles real smiles and who fakes them. Why? She asked. Because people tell you things without words. You just have to pay attention. Unia nodded seriously, like it was a game. But Calder knew it wasn't a game, that IT was survival. Every interaction became practice. The barista who remembered their order, the security guard who let them use the lobby bathroom, the librarian who didn't ask why they were there every day. Calder studied them all, learned how to read micro-expressions, hesitations, patterns of speech. Every slight became a data point, every rejection a lesson. The power imbalance hadn't changed. He was still on the outside, but his mind was sharper now that he stopped reacting emotionally, stopped taking things personally. Instead, he analyzed, predicted, planned. Like chess, Celine made her first move when she falsified the audit. That was aggressive, risky, which meant she was either very confident or very desperate. Calder replayed her behavior in meetings. The way she positioned herself near Hale. The way she controlled information flow. And she wasn't just ambitious. She was threatened to be him. That realization changed everything. That if she saw him as a threat, it meant he had something she wanted, access to Hale. Trust. A position she thought belonged to her. That Calder's mind raced through possibilities. Hale had tested him in the restaurant, then hired him, then let Celine destroy him publicly. But Hale hadn't fired him completely, just suspended him. Why? Because the test wasn't over. Hale was watching to see what Calder would do next. Would he give up? Disappear? Prove Celine right? Or would he fight back? But not with anger. Not with desperation. With intelligence. Calder opened his laptop in the library. Started documenting everything he remembered. Timestamps. Email chains. Meeting notes. Every piece of evidence that could prove the audit was falsified. They didn't have access to the company's systems anymore. But he had his memory. And he had patterns. Unia looked up from her book. Daddy, are you building something? Calder paused. Yeah, sweetheart. I am. What? He smiled slightly. A comeback. She didn't fully understand. But she smiled back anyway. Over the next week, Calder's strategy took shape. He couldn't confront Celine directly. She had power, resources, allies. But he could outthink her, but he could find the one thing she'd overlooked. The one mistake she'd made in her perfect plan. Because everyone made mistakes, even people who thought they were untouchable. Calder's competence had been built through struggle. Through years of fighting just to survive. Celine's competence came from privilege, from always having resources, from never truly being tested. That was her weakness, and Calder was going to exploit it. He mapped out his next moves carefully. Precisely. Every step calculated. Every risk measured. The power imbalance remained. But Calder wasn't playing by their rules anymore. He was playing by his own, and the reckoning was coming. Late at night, Calder sat alone in the car. Unia slept in the back seat, her breathing soft and steady. Through the windshield, the city skyline stretched out before him. Tall buildings, bright lights, power concentrated in steel and glass. And at the very top, one penthouse stood out from all the rest, Everett Hale's. The lights were still on. Even at this hour, Calder stared at them, wondering if Hale was up there right now. Watching, waiting. testing. The past months replayed in Calder's mind like a movie he'd watched 100 times. The humiliation in the restaurant. The test he didn't know he was taking. The job offer that changed everything. The rise. The sabotage. The public fall. All of it connected. All of it planned. The test was complete now. Calder understood that. But the lesson was only half learned. Hale hadn't just tested his restraint or his intelligence. He'd tested his resilience. His ability to be destroyed and still rebuild. Most people would have given up by now. Would have blamed Hale. Would have walked away bitter and broken. But Calder wasn't most people. The public fall hurt. The betrayal stung. The humiliation burned. But it also taught him something crucial. How to see the game for what it really was. This wasn't about right or wrong. It wasn't about fairness or justice in the traditional sense. It was about power and the willingness to endure anything to claim it. Calder had endured. And now he was ready for the next step. That he pulled out the notebook he'd been keeping. Pages filled with observations, patterns, connections, everything he'd learned about the company, about Celine, about the people who thought they were untouchable. The foundation for a reversal the city hadn't imagined yet, because they'd all made one critical mistake, that they'd underestimated him. Calder looked over at Unia sleeping peacefully. Her small hand clutched the stuffed reindeer she'd been carrying since Christmas Eve. The night this all started, he reached back and gently squeezed her hand. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. "I won't fail you," he whispered. "Not this time. Not ever." Quiet determination replaced the fear that had been eating at him for weeks. He knew the next steps now. Knew exactly what he had to do. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be fast. But it would work. Because Calder had learned to think like them. To see patterns they couldn't see. To move through their world without making the mistakes they expected. He'd become what Hale had been testing for all along. Someone who could survive anything. Someone who could rise from nothing. Someone who couldn't be broken. Somewhere above the city. In that penthouse with the lights still burning, Everett Hale waited. But this time was different. This time, Calder Rowan had seen the pattern, had understood the game, had learned the rules they never taught openly. The power imbalance still existed, but it was shifting. Slowly, carefully, inevitably, the game had changed. And the final play was coming. Calder started the car engine. The old motor turned over with a rough cough, but it started. Always did that. He pulled out of the parking spot and drove slowly through the empty streets. Unia shifted in the back seat. "Daddy, where are we going?" Calder glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Smiled slightly. "Forward," he said simply. And for the first time in weeks, he meant it. That if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me what you think Calder should do next. Part 2 is coming soon. And you won't want to miss what happens when Calder makes his move. See you in the next one.